engaging. So we are really excited to have her back. And I'm just going to give a little bit of update on what she's doing now, right? So New York State Supreme Court Justice Valerie M. Cartwright took office on January 1st, 2021. Prior to her election to the judiciary, she served as a councilwoman for 7 years in the town of Brookhaven. So she was a councilwoman when she last came and visited us here. The town of Brookhaven is the second largest town in the state of New York with a population of approximately 500,000 residents. As an elected official, Councilwoman Valerie Cartwright worked to ensure responsible, smart growth, community-based planning within her district, including the continuing development of various land use plans. She was a champion of our local environment and secured funding for infrastructure upgrades and water quality programs for our shorelines, harbor, and marinas. As a practicing attorney throughout her legal career, Justice Cartwright gained invaluable legal experience in the areas of construction law, insurance defense, general, civil, and criminal law, civil rights, family education, and labor and employment law. One of the most fulfilling areas that she has worked in is the area of voter protection, wherein through her former office, the law offices of Frederick K. Brewington, she commenced litigation to uphold the Voting Rights Act and worked diligently to prevent unconstitutional and discriminatory denial of voters on Long Island. Justice Cartwright received her Juris Doctorate from Touro College, Jacob D. Fuchsberg Law Center in Suffolk County, after receiving her undergraduate degree in international studies from West Virginia University. She is licensed to practice law in the states of New York, New Jersey, and Florida, and has extensive litigation experience in the federal and state courts. During her legal career, Justice Cartwright has earned numerous awards for academic excellence, contributions, and service to the law school and legal community. She remains steadfast in her commitment to mentoring and coaching law students and new attorneys. Justice Cartwright has remained active in various bar associations. She is the past president of the Amistad Long Island Black Bar Association, the former chairperson of the Civil Rights Committee of the Nassau County Bar Association, and the former chairperson of the Young Lawyers section of the New York State Bar Association. She currently holds office on the National Bar Association, Women Lawyers Division Executive Board, and is still an active member of the American Bar Association, National Bar Association, Suffolk County Bar Association, and Amistad Long Island Black Bar Association. Justice Cartwright continues to play an integral role in molding the young minds of leaders of today and tomorrow through various mentoring commitments and through her service to and through various community organizations. Justice Cartwright also teaches as an adjunct instructor at St. Joseph's College in Patchogue in the Human Services Management and Leadership Master's Program, teaching a leadership, law, and ethics course. We are so excited to have you here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I want to say formally good evening to everyone. We are still in January, so I think it's appropriate to say Happy New Year. So Happy New Year to all. As previously mentioned, I am Valerie Cartwright, and I'd like to thank you for having me back to speak at this BOCES community meeting. Of course, I'd like to commend Mr. Miller for his great work on this committee and for his continued efforts in making sure that the community gets valuable information each and every month. And of course, Ms. Lutz for all of the great work that she does to assist with this committee. So as was previously stated in my bio, is that I am a sitting New York State Supreme Court Justice. I currently serve in Suffolk County. I was elected in November of 2020, garnering over 1 million votes across Nassau and Suffolk County, as it is a county-wide it's Nassau is 2 counties, so it's Nassau and Suffolk County-wide race. My term as a Supreme Court Justice is 14 years, and it commenced January 1st, 2021. When I spoke to you a few years ago, as was stated, I was in another elected position. I was serving as a council person in the town of Brookhaven, and that carried 2-year terms. And that was eventually changed to 4-year terms. But today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about my role as a Supreme Court Justice and about my commitment to mentoring young people to be leaders, and my journey to justice. So with that, I'd like to start my screen sharing and just begin by showing you the presentation. So there is closed caption on the bottom. So if there's anyone who needs that assistance, or it just makes it a little easier for you to follow, please feel free to look at the captioning. So journey. When we talk about a journey, we talk about the act of traveling from one place to another. There's a proverb that I utilize a lot, which says that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So during this presentation, we'll talk about some of my steps that I've taken to get to the place that I'm at. And it's important for me to go through the process with you, because many times people will see a person and say, well, this is where they are, and it must have been easy, or, it just took a year or two. But it took a very long time for me to arrive where I am in my career, and in my personal life, in my spiritual life. So it's a path that I like to share with others. There's also an African proverb, or actually an African word and principle called Sankofa. It carries with it a proverb that means go back and get it, or go back and fetch it. And it is also one of the proverbs that I utilize a lot. The visual symbol for the Sankofa is a bird, and the bird is flying forward, but looking backwards. One should remember the past to make positive progress in the future. That is the proverb that is signified by the Sankofa bird. So I always look into my past and my roots. So when we talk about what is your beginning place, when we look at our own journeys, ask yourself, what is your beginning? What are your roots? Where did you come from? I indicated to you previously that it's important to incorporate your past when looking at your future. For me, I trace my roots back to the African continent, and then to the island of Haiti, and then here to the United States. I grew up in Queens Village and spent much of my adult life in Nassau and Suffolk County. And now that we've identified my beginning, I want you to think also about your beginnings. Where did you start off? Was it in a different state? Was it in Suffolk County? Was it a different type of community? I always ask people to think about that, because it really shapes who you are today and is an important part of your journey. Also, I ask others to look into who and what they identify with. For me, I made a list of the who and what I identify with. And I would list them as the following. Christian. For me, my faith is the crux of my life. I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. For each of you, it might be different. You may not believe in a higher power, or you may believe in a different higher power. But regardless, think of what it is that motivates you. What is it that gets you from point A to point B each and every day? And what takes you through your struggles? My Haitian heritage is important to me. I grew up, and the first language that I spoke was French, because I lived with my grandmother. She didn't speak English. So my parents migrated here over 50 years ago, at a time when Haiti was under dictatorship and was in great political turmoil. I mean, if you listen to the news, you'll know there's a lot of turmoil there as well now in Haiti. But at the time my parents came here, they came here for a better life and for their safety. My father understood the importance of this country giving him another opportunity, and an opportunity for him and his family, that he proudly served in the Vietnam War without being a citizen here in the United States. So those are things that have left imprints on me and my commitment to service and the commitment that I have to serve this country. As African American is listed here, and as I indicated, I use that as one of my main identifiers. I list myself here as a mom. I was looking at the pictures and the attendees here today, and I saw a few beautiful children. I think it's important that we identify ourselves as mothers, if we are, and allow our children to be with us and be part of the process. I recall going to a number of community events when I had my child, and she's 5 years old now. So I was a council person at the time. And I recall the shock of some of my colleagues because they weren't used to seeing a young woman, having a child, serving in that role, and then bringing the child along with her to various events and being in the community. I call my baby Noelle a community baby because everyone embraced her. And it was important for me to let other women know that just because you choose to have children, it should not stop your ability to move forward with your success. Wife is one of my identifiers. I have an amazing husband of 6 years and counting. I got married a little late in life, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to be married and to have a child that is 5 years old and counting. I'm a daughter to my parents, who, as I indicated, are Haitian immigrants. I'm thankful that they were here for me throughout this process to see me at every step, councilperson, Supreme Court justice. So those are things that I use as identifiers. I'm a sister to 2 brothers. I'm an elected official. I started my career in government as an elected official in 2014 as a councilwoman. And I was proud to serve my constituency then. And as a Supreme Court justice, I am proud to continue to serve the constituency. Now I'm a judge of the Supreme Court. Lawyer. I practiced for years as a civil rights attorney and a criminal defense attorney. I started my legal career at Touro Law School over 20 years ago. And that created a commitment and a love and a bond for Long Island, differently than I ever had before. I'm a professor at St. Joseph's College, as was indicated previously. I teach leadership, law, and ethics. I have a lot of adults in my classes, people that are either looking to elevate in their careers or change careers. So it's a graduate program, and it has been a wonderful experience. I've always considered myself to be an advocate. I started off with my grandmother that I told you didn't speak English. You can only imagine being a young child and my grandmother having to go to the doctor or have concerns, and she had no one to translate for her. So I found myself advocating for her at the doctor's office on a regular basis because I was that child that understood both languages and was able to assist. So I think my advocacy skills started to develop at that age, a very young age. And from that point forward, it was important for me to make sure that others had an opportunity to be heard. I wrote down Zeta. I'm not sure if any are even familiar with the name, but I'm a member of what one is called a Black Greek letter organization, or commonly known as a sorority. It is an organization that is I've been a member of since I was in college, and I continue my service to the community even in my adulthood. Our principles are scholarship, service, sisterhood, and finer womanhood. And as many people may have heard over the past year and a half or so, our Vice President, Kamala Harris, she is a member of one of the Black Greek letter organizations, and that's Alpha Kappa Alpha. So I'm appreciative of the fact that it is now allowing a light to be shown on the work of the Black Greek letter organization. So I'm very active. So I use that as one of my identifiers. And a mentor. Being a mentor is something that I identify with no matter what position I hold and no matter what role I'm playing in. I believe it's important to give back and make sure that we are always lifting each other up. So I'm just going to give you a moment to come off mute and tell me 2 or 3 things at the top of your brain that you identify with. And you don't have to give an explanation, just put it out there. Feel free to unmute. I don't hear anyone.
I can start. I am a mom, Latino, and a helper.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Sister, daughter, and leader.
Okay. What are two more people?
I'll go. I'm a person of faith, a mother, a servant, and a leader.
Okay. Okay, there's no one else. I'd like to thank everyone who did share. You don't have to share, but think about it. Think about how you identify yourself. It shapes your journey, and it also is an indicator of what hats you're going to wear in the future. I've worn so many hats. 35 years ago, you couldn't, if I had to make a list like this, I wouldn't have thought that I would have been wearing these many hats. In fact, when I was in college, I started off as a general studies major and then graduated with an international studies relations background with a concentration on Africa and the Middle East. It was not until I graduated college and started working that I made the big jump to follow the dream of being a lawyer. And all the opportunities presented itself from that point forward. So if you look at, sorry, I'm just trying to get to the, yep. If you look at the common thread in all of my career choices, you'll see that they're all service oriented. They're centered around education, whether it's educating others or me getting in additional education to better myself. Centered around helping others, empowering others, positions me to mentor others, no matter what role I play. And it also allows me to strive for justice. So there is a common thread. So when you sit down and do your own list, think about what that common thread is that binds all of your many hats that you wear. So how did I prepare? Now, one would not think, well, how did you become a judge? How did you prepare for judge? I like to look at it as, how did I prepare for the beginning of my career? How did I prepare throughout my career? And it wasn't just to be a judge, because that wasn't always the goal. It's always to be a person seeking justice. So regardless of if I'm wearing a lawyer hat or if I'm in a situation where I believe that justice is not being served, in a familial situation, I was always one to speak out and to advocate on behalf of that person. But one of the things that I did to prepare for my career, whichever way that it was going, was education. And whether it's college, whether it's technical apprenticeship, doing your own research, this day and age, you can get almost any bit of information on the internet. I remember growing up, everything was encyclopedia, and we literally had to go to the basement and pull out the actual Britannica encyclopedia. So we are at a place in time where information is at our fingertips. So education. So it's important to educate yourself about requirements necessary to achieve your goals. Always be ready. Always be ready for your next. Not always knowing what's next, but always be ready for your next job, your next challenge, your next opportunity. I learned years ago that it's not about getting ready. It's about being ready. Because when that time comes, you may not have time to get ready. Just be ready. So always prepare yourself and be ready for the next. Try not to burn bridges. You may not always like the people that you work with. You may not like the people you go to school with. They may not like you. And that's a given. However, we have to learn how to communicate, how to collaborate, how to work alongside others, even if they're not our friends, or even if we don't have similar personalities. what it does is it allows you to create a larger network. You never know when you might cross paths with that person again, and when or how you might be able to help each other. So that's something to think about. Never be afraid to ask questions. I know many times people feel that asking too many questions and make it seem like they don't know. It's better to ask questions and try to get it right than to not ask questions because of a fear of what someone might perceive, and then you get it wrong just because you didn't ask that specific question. Be open-minded. Take all of your opportunities. So when we talk about turning failures into success, understand that just because things didn't work out the way that you wanted them to at that time, doesn't mean that the next step in your life is not success. So determine why you failed. Determine why it didn't turn out the way you want to, and do what you can to turn that around. Perspective on setbacks and do-overs. I always say that every time you have to do something over, it gives you another opportunity to make it perfect. It is another opportunity to get closer to excellence. So working hard, that's the next thing about how did I prepare? I've always considered myself to be a hard worker. Since I was in college, I would say you might be able to outsmart me, but you can't outwork me. So I work really, really hard. And my phone is ringing in the background. My apologies. I remember my professor, who is my mentor, she would say to me, work hard, play hard, and pray hard. And I think of those things all the time. Work hard, play hard, and pray hard. And then strive towards excellence. I talked about that earlier. Be over-prepared. Many times, you may think that you've done just enough, but you never know what's going to be presented to you. So the way that I function in my life and everything that I do is to be over-prepared. It's always better to be over-prepared than to be under-prepared. And don't be deterred by attacks. Know that attacks are always going to come. There are going to be people that are going to try to sabotage, or there are going to be situations wherein people are trying to get to where you're trying to get. Don't be deterred by those attacks. Remember that many times when an attack on you fails, it's not the attack that has set you back, it's our own perspective that set us back. So don't allow someone else's efforts to stop you that have failed. Don't allow that to be something that you continue to internalize so that you can't move forward. So don't be deterred by attacks that come at you. And I always say it's important for me to just anticipate that there are going to be problems, there are going to be obstacles, some of them that are caused by other people, others that just happen because of circumstances. And don't be deterred, just continue to move forward. So why the justice system? So once I decided that I wanted to run for judge, many people asked me, well, why? Why do you still want to continue working in the justice system? Especially with everything that's been going on around us. You turn on the news and it sounded like there's just no justice in so many areas. For me, I first look at the definition of justice, right? It's defined as one, there are a few definitions. One, the process of using laws to fairly judge and punish crimes and criminals, or the quality of being just. This is what I subscribe to, this definition: righteousness, equitableness, moral rightness, to uphold the justice of a cause. So the justice system allows me the opportunity to move forward towards the good in any cause. I can serve on both sides. As an attorney, I served as a criminal defense attorney. I served as a civil prosecution. There are so many different ways for you to move forward towards justice. And then perception. What's your perception of justice? Justice is not always about being on the winning side, which I'm sure feels good if you're on the winning side, but it's not always about that. It's about having access. It's about being given opportunities to tell your story. It's about the opportunity to be heard, feeling that there is some hope and that there's some form of relief or redress, that there is a possibility of some good being done as a result of a harm. When we look at the evolution of our justice system, the view of justice evolves clearly based on what's been happening around us. But the courts should also evolve, especially in light of the fact that we come together in expressions of solidarity connected to joy or grief. And you can witness that by having been home for so long during this COVID period, watching all of the news and being able to actually internalize what's been happening across the world and across the country. And it has created levels of solidarity that I have never seen before in my lifetime. And the question is, what do we do with that solidarity? And what you've seen is changes that have been occurring in so many different systems as a result of that solidarity and as a result of the awareness of what's been happening around us. So for the court system in particular, one of the initiatives that came out of the past few years and some of the incidents that have occurred in the past few years is the Equal Justice in the Courts initiative. And I'm going to read to you a statement from one of our deputy administrative judges, Edwina Mendelson. She issued a statement in April of 2021. And it says, in June 2020, amidst the hardships of an international pandemic that changed our way of life, our nation faced its most recent reckoning on issues of racism, bias, and inequality. These are long-standing issues, but recent events, most notably the death of George Floyd, cast a renewed spotlight on the inequality permeating all of our institutions. The courts are no exception to this troubling reality. Our Chief Judge, Janet DeFiore, responded by commissioning former Obama administration cabinet member Jay Johnson to conduct a thorough review on issues of racial bias within the New York State court system. The ensuing report, which is a report that can be accessed on the New York State Unified Court System website, from Secretary Johnson and his law firm team, identified that racism and bias remain very present throughout and within the court system. The report sets forth 13 distinct recommendations on how we all can and must do better to combat racism within the court system and promote a more fair and equitable justice system for all. So this is something, and I wanted to present this to everyone because the eye-opening has not only occurred within our households, within our own establishments, it is happening across all systems. And when I became a member of the judicial system, I was made aware of many of these initiatives that have been undertaken in the past 2 to 3 years. Some of the recommendations included expanding bias training, addressing juror bias, continuing progress on translation and interpretation services, improving data collection, improving diversity in HR practices, enhancing the trust between the court officers and the community. Now, those are just some of the recommendations that came forward, but if you think about some of these recommendations, you may have some of those same recommendations for your own establishments. And that's something that is across the board, but people are now realizing that it's time to not only evaluate our systems, but also to take action towards change. One of the initiatives that came out of the Equal Justice Initiative was a division called Access to Justice, which is something that I, as a new judge, am interested in being a part of. It includes pro bono programs for attorneys and volunteer court navigators, programs to assist court users with disabilities, community outreach, and a plain language initiative designed to make legal information easier to understand. As a judge, it is disheartening when you have pro se litigants, that means attorneys who don't have, parties who don't have attorneys come before me and they don't understand how to access the information. They don't understand the legal terminology, but then they can't afford to get an attorney. Access to justice is so important. And it's heartening to know that we are now moving towards improving access to justice. The court system and the judiciary branch. So I spent over 20 years, as I indicated previously, in the legal field. So from interning at the federal courthouse to practicing law, we were shaping law based on verdicts and decisions. Then I spent another 7 years, as you all know, because I spoke to you a few years ago as a council person in the legislative branch, working and trying to create laws on a local level. And now I just entered my 2nd year in the judiciary branch. Many people overlook the fact that the state's judiciary is a co-equal partner in government, along with the executive branch and the legislative branch, that we're all branches impacting the lives of others on a daily basis. So as a practicing attorney, I always believed that the courts were the last mile marker on the road to justice. So being given the opportunity to now serve on the bench and administer justice on behalf of those who have controversy or those who are aggrieved is a way for me to continue my path towards justice. However, now I administer the justice, and I do it, of course, to the best of my ability. New York State court system is large. It handles 4 million cases a year, heard throughout the state's 62 counties. The matters brought before the courts are brought before judges, hearing officers, support magistrates, and attorney referees. The issues that come before the courts are, they span from criminal cases to personal injury claims, to domestic relation matters, to commercial disputes, to landlord-tenant issues. And the redress is legal and equitable remedies within the court system. I have 2 charts just so you have a better idea of how the court system is set up. That's been a lot of the questions that I've received once I became a judge. You know, what does the Supreme Court do exactly? Is that the highest court? Is that a trial court? So New York is probably the only state that the highest court is not called the Supreme Court. The highest court is called the Court of Appeals. And then right under the Court of Appeals, we have the Appellate Division, and there are 4 departments in the Appellate Division. And we belong to the 2nd department. So that's Suffolk County, Nassau County, Queens, King, and a number of other counties. The Appellate Division of the Supreme Court is the first level of appeal from the courts of original jurisdiction. So when we look at the Appellate Division and the appellate terms in county courts, the appellate terms in county courts depend on the department, but all of these are appellate courts. When you look at those, you are looking at appeals from courts of original jurisdiction. The Supreme Court is a court of original jurisdiction. There, we can hear almost any issue. However, the state has a policy that we don't hear issues where they have tribunals that are dedicated to that. So there are tribunals dedicated to landlord-tenant. There are tribunals dedicated to criminal courts in Suffolk County. There are tribunals dedicated to other types of areas of law, and therefore the Supreme Court judges do not hear those issues. But I currently sit in Suffolk County. I'm assigned to the matrimonial part. So I deal with a lot of domestic relations law. It also touches on family law, particularly when I have parties that come before me that have children going through a divorce. The next slide, which is the last slide, shows the similar to the slide before, but this one, I want to point out the initiatives. So if you look to the right, you'll see DCAJ, which deals with our administrative judge, and is the deputy administrative judge, and it says access to justice. That is what I touched on earlier. These are some of the areas that the court has focused on over the years: community outreach, court help website, a court navigator program, a do-it-yourself form, help centers, volunteer programs. And then we work through language access. You can imagine having those come before you that speak a particular language and they have no one to translate for them, and they need to ask their family members to translate for them. So over the years, there have been expanded language access programs, and it has really created some momentum with respect to providing additional access to justice. So this is some of the information that I'm presenting today about my journey to justice, where I am now, the work that I'm doing within the Supreme Court, but also the work that the court system is doing on its own and has been doing for years. I'm looking to now, in this new role, be a part of increasing access to justice so that we are in a better place as it relates to our justice system. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments as it relates to anything that I've stated in my presentation.
So let me just say, we've had some students jump on. So there are some students in, some of them all have the name of their classroom assistant but anyway, so thank you very much. Yes, so Justice Cartwright would like this to be interactive. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to unmute yourself if you can. If you can't do that, put it in the chat and we'll read it for you.
I see Leah put access to justice, profound work. Thank you. Well, you're welcome for bringing this information to us and working to shape the government branches to work for the people. And I will continue to do so. Any questions or comments?
Quick question. Can you, as being reflective, talk about your first year as Supreme Court Justice?
Yes.
Any highlights or anything you want to identify and talk about specifically?
Yeah. One can only imagine how difficult it was to transition at such a groundbreaking time, right? We are in the beginning of COVID, and we were in a situation where the courts were looking to, or had just started converting to virtual appearances. So across the state, the majority of counties and different departments actually stayed down, meaning they did not convert their appearances to virtual appearances. They just stopped, moving the cases along. In Suffolk County, our courts, we went virtual almost immediately. And we were learning as we went. Most of our cases were not e-filed. So they were still paper files. You had to come in, you had to file everything within the court clerk office. However, because we closed the courthouse down to outside persons, we had to now start e-filing all of these cases and allowing applications to come through the e-filing process. What this has done, the first year was very difficult to get up to speed, but what it has done now, it has given more access to the people, because now things are electronic. Now there are mandatory e-filing cases that need to be made. The majority of cases need to be e-filed, and they list the exceptions as to those that do not need to be. If you are a pro se litigant who does not have access to a computer, then you have, that is an exception that can be made as well. But now we have come into the newest century, which I don't think would have happened if it wasn't for COVID. So the judges and the court system were forced into getting into this century and into the new technology. So one, learning to adjust with all of the other judges and the court system. Two, having to have a quick shift of mindset to let me remind you, I came from being a civil rights attorney. I came from a time period where there was a lot of advocacy that was happening, and I was on the ground. Once you become a judge, there are things you cannot talk about. There are things you cannot get involved in. Everything shifted for me overnight. So that was a bit difficult. But once I understood my role and I started to get comfortable in wearing the robe and being there and understanding what my role was at that very groundbreaking time, it was a little easier. Andrea, I wanted to just bring up the fact that there was the issue of backlog because of COVID. So I'm coming in as a new judge. Training is happening virtually, not in person. And you have a lot of backlog that you have to pick up because of the COVID. So of course, it was a lot to do at one time, but it wasn't anything that was not manageable. It has been an amazing experience. I am in the matrimonial part, partly by choice. I am happy to be working with others. I want to work with people and I want to be able to assist them in their one of their most trying times in their life. So I think that this was a good place for me to be placed right at the outset. So it's been, as one can imagine, a matrimonial part can be a difficult part to sit in, but it has been a rewarding experience when I feel that I can help people get through this time when it is probably one of the worst times in their life.
There are some things in the chat. So Mary says, very inspired by all you've achieved. We have very similar stories of immigration. I can only hope to enact this level of service. Thank you. So glad I was able to be a part of this.
You're welcome.
Amanda, how can we as students be heard by our legislators and the people who make decisions for us? Thank you so much for sharing all of your inspiring and amazing information.
How can you as students be heard? Okay, so be a part of the process. Go to meetings, listen to what's being said. One of the things that COVID has allowed for us is to see almost everything virtually. So if you live in the town of Brookhaven, you don't have to go to Independence Hill and go to the meeting in person. You can now take an hour of your time and look at the actual board meeting and say, this is an issue that I'd like to discuss with my legislators. Reach out to them, set up meetings to have conversations so that they know what you're interested in. When I was a council person, some of the things that came to my attention that no one had ever done anything on was only brought to my attention because someone took the initiative. They came, they said, I'd like to have a meeting. I gave them the meeting and they sat down and they told me about what initiative they wanted to start or what they felt that we were not providing. It gave me a different perspective and I was able to work with them. And I have a long list of things that I was the first at doing while I was a council person, but it wasn't, most of them weren't because of my own initiative. It was because someone from the community said, I want you to see that this is important and it's not being addressed. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask your legislators for a meeting, email them. Sometimes people think that legislators don't want to hear from their constituents, but that's not really the case. Majority of the time we do.
So from Samantha Bruno, you had spoken about figuring out what you identify as. How do you think that would benefit us as students?
As a student, well, I talked a little bit about me as a student and coming in as a general studies major, trying to figure out my way. I think when the earlier you're able to identify yourself and know what you identify with, it'll help you in defining your career path. And just because you may receive a certificate or a degree in something, it doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be forever. Be open-minded to change, but understand that identifying what is important to you and who you consider yourself to be and what drives you is going to help you in making determinations as to what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
So two questions really similar. So I'm going to read them both at the same time. This is from Jocelyn. What advice would you give to a young adult graduating high school as they navigate in the current world? And similar from Ashley, what is one piece of advice you would give all high school students that are looking to attend college that you wish you knew? So advice for high schoolers getting ready to leave high school.
Okay. One, navigating the current world. Don't solely rely upon what others tell you. So you may go, your school might provide you information on your transition from high school to college, or high school to an apprenticeship or technical school. That's not all the information. That's not the four corners of information. We are at a point in our time where, as I indicated, you have access to information at your fingertips. So take your own initiative, talk to others that are in the field that you aspire to be in, find out what their struggles were, work with them, do your own independent research, cross-check, call the company, call the school, get additional information. And that leads into my second, the second question. What is it that I wish I knew? I wish I knew that there were so many additional scholarship opportunities out there. Those things weren't presented to me. I'm thankful that I did get a scholarship. I went to West Virginia University, but as I moved on through the years, I realized that there were so many different opportunities to get scholarships. And even if we're talking about a $2,500 scholarship here, or $2,000 scholarship here, those things assist you in your books, with your books. They assist you with not having to work. I remember working at a restaurant, during school, trying to manage everything. Had I been able to identify some of those other scholarship opportunities and get those scholarships, and not all scholarships are academic. So, if I was able to identify them and secure them, then I might have had a little bit more time to just give to my studies. Rather than trying to balance everything.
Did you deal with any stress as you worked your way up to who you are now? And how do you deal with that and apply it to working harder?
Always dealing with stress, but I deal with stress with a smile on my face. Stress is, I believe that it comes with the territory to some degree in any advancement. The question is, how do you cope with your stress? And I make it a point to take care of myself, to give myself personal days, and surround yourself with people that believe that you need to give yourself you time as well. Some of my staff, for example, I remember being a council person, some of my staff would put in the calendar that I had something scheduled when I didn't, because they wanted to make sure that I had that 5-hour block to just sleep, or to go to the spa, or do something that I needed to do for myself to unwind. Sometimes, depending on your personality, you might just go, because it's part of your nature. I am adrenaline driven. So I'm always running, and sometimes I don't listen to my body. So it's good to have people around you to remind you of how important it is to listen to your body. And I've actually gotten better over the past few years in making sure that I carve out time to take care of myself and do those things that make me feel better and pamper myself. And that makes me a lot more productive and a lot happier.
And any other questions? If you don't want to put them in the chat, you can unmute and ask. We have a couple more minutes.
I did have a question. At one of our locations, we have a student-run committee that prioritizes our school's diversity, equity, and inclusivity. The students work on initiatives every month, and I was wondering if you had any ideas that the students should work on that pertain to our current climate.
I don't have any particular ideas, but what I can do is put you in touch with someone that does DEI work, and that's what they do. If you want to shoot me an email, I will send you a private message with my email information, Ms. Robrecht, and then you can just shoot me an email and I'll connect you with her. I'm sure she'll be able to provide you a number of suggestions.
I would love that. Thank you.
No problem. Anything else? No? Okay, is there anything else you want me to cover, Mr. Miller?
No, I think we covered everything. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the opportunity to listen to me. Thank you for inviting me. This is always a wonderful experience. And it's great to see, and I see that we are woman heavy today. So if there are any questions or anything, you can always follow up with me. Julie Lutz will be, I'm sure will be happy to forward information directly to me. And however I can be of assistance, I'm here for that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Justice Cartwright. It was very good to see you. Good to have you where you are at this point in your career. It's much needed.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
thank you. Just a couple of upcoming events for the rest of the committee. Longwood School District's 18th Regional Legislative Virtual Workshop is coming up on February 5th. We'll get information out for those folks who might want to jump on that virtually. And we also have BOCES's virtual advocacy event, which is now a week's worth of meetings with elected officials. So for those of you who are students, you should be hearing more about that from the leaders in your buildings who help students prepare for that. So I do want to thank everybody for coming out, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Miller, for closing.
Okay, for closing remarks, I'd just like to thank everyone for tonight's meeting and wish everyone a very happy new year. Thank you, Judge Cartwright, for your summary tonight. And I think if we had more of our students on, I think it would be more helpful to everyone. And I think it will be. And I'd just like to say our next meeting will be February 10th at 7 p.m. Guest speaker is Brian Fessler, New York State School Board Association. And with that, everyone have a great weekend, have a dry weekend and a safe weekend. Thank you again, Judge Cartwright.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.